Hello, and welcome back to Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about gunfighting and defense and some other things related to guns the right way, with God at the center, from a Judeo-Christian worldview and from real-world, first-hand experience. I am your host, Michael Melito. First and foremost, I am a Christian. God is number one. I hope to recognize that in everything that I do, and this podcast is no different. Grew up hunting and shooting at a very early age in the South. Joined the Marine Corps at 17. Did a couple of combat tours in Iraq. After my combat tours, I was an urban warfare instructor for the United States Marine Corps. I also worked for LAPD, law enforcement, both regular assignments and more specialized assignments. Or by God's grace, I worked some nasty war zones and some nasty streets in the country as a gunfighter, and by God's grace, made it back in one piece. Not because I deserved it, because God chose to have mercy on me. Also served in the U.S. Army, both full-time and part-time National Guard. I've been a private contractor for a 3-letter government agency I won't specify. Also served as the commander of a tactical team in a large metropolitan area where our primary job was to stop active shooters. I've been blessed to win more shooting competitions than I can remember, mostly in pistol, but also in rifle and some other disciplines. Been a professional big game hunter and guide. Hunted all over this beautiful country, elk and buffalo, bear and wolf, slayed all manner of beast. With that, guys, let's get into today's topic. Today we're going to be talking about the Remington 870. Odds are, if you know even a handful of guns, you probably know the Remington 870. It's been used by civilians and hunters and home defenders for decades and decades. It has been used by law enforcement, by the military, both ours and abroad. It is truly a classic American firearm. One may even argue iconic firearm, the Remington 870. Now, per Wikipedia, introduced in 1950. That means if you think about an old classic car like a 57 Chevy or a 1950s Ford truck, 50-something Ford truck, the Remington 870 would have come out before that. It came out in 1950. A classic. And it's still relevant today. It is still being used today by law enforcement all over. In fact, when I was in law enforcement, I was trained on and used an 870. It was, when I was at LAPD, it was our go-to long arm. Now, also in law enforcement, I did also use M4s and Mini 14s and a host of other firearms. And my more specialized assignments, I mentioned, I was even, able to have full auto M4s, the old school Thompson submachine guns, all kinds of neat stuff. But when it came time to go into a house, the weapon that I preferred was the Remington 870, even though I had access to all that other stuff. I'm not, even if I'm in an urban environment as a law enforcement officer, I'm not going down the streets of Mogadishu with crowds of, hostiles needing to dump 30 rounds. Most likely, in an encounter like that, the first few rounds, the first one or maybe two, are probably going to be the most decisive rounds. And those first one or two rounds out of a Remington 870 ballistically are devastating compared to most other small arms. A 12 gauge round, whether from an 870 or a Mossberg 500 or a Benelli M4 or anything like that, the payload out of a round of buckshot, double-aught buck or number 4 buck, or a Foster slug or Bernanke slug, the payload, the devastation at close range that those things offer is amazing. If I'm about surviving a gunfight, I don't really care what's cooler looking. I shouldn't be concerned about what's on the cover of Recoil magazine or or anything like that. I should be concerned about what is the best tool for the gunfight at hand. Is a 12-gauge shotgun, is something like that always the best choice? No, of course not. Not on a battlefield or something like that, but for law enforcement, for civilians, for home defense, a lot of times, yes, a 12-gauge or 20-gauge for that matter is likely your best choice. And the 870, what it offers is that power repeatably. If you listen for any length of time, you know that I like the 12-gauge single-shot guns. I think they're very utilitarian. You know I like single-shot shotguns. I grew up hunting with them. I still hunt with them. Old single-shot shotgun you can still get for, $100 and a few dollars. Maybe even cheaper used at a gun show. Is a great gun. But it doesn't give you a quick rate of fire. A pump shotgun does. The Remington 870 does. It gives you power repeatably, quickly and dependably. And that's a lot, especially for the cost. For $300, $350. I don't know in the gun ammo apocalypse, I don't know what ban is going to come down the pipe next. Russian ammo ban, maybe American shotgun ban is next, who knows. But I'm talking about in general, in normal times, pre-crazy inflation, or whenever you're listening to this, generally between, at a big box store, $299 for a Remington 870 Express. $299, maybe $329, maybe $350. Depending on where you're going to go and shop for one or what features you want. You can certainly spend more and get some, Marine model or something like that, or a super tacked out one from, Wilson Combat and go really high in the money. But you can get all those things that power repeatably for under $400 in, at the time of this recording, or most times before that, and all but the craziest gun bans. And that's something. I don't agree with the majority of what seems to be gun culture, and I could be wrong on this, but it seems like most people think that the pump shotgun is the best option for a defensive shotgun. I would disagree with that opinion and say I think semi-auto is. My go-to shotgun is a Benelli M2. I've owned a Benelli M4, I owned a Benelli M1. My go-to shotgun, and I guess I should mention, crazy one-gun scenario, end-of-the-world apocalypse, my one long gun would be a shotgun, and it would be my Benelli M2. So I don't think that pumps are better. But that Benelli M2 costs several $1,000s. At least, $1,500, or probably more with all the options that I have on it, different barrels, all those things. That's quite a bit more than the $300 to $400 we just talked about. And not everybody always, I shouldn't say that. Some people think the one gun debate is silly. But for, for the young man that just turned 18, that is saving up, that has, car insurance to pay, and gas is going up in price, and they've been saving, and $450 is their budget. That Benelli's not going to do them any good. I would rather them get the 870 and get $50 worth of ammo, a box of birdshot of 100 rounds, and 25 rounds of buckshot, and 10 slugs, 5 to shoot and pattern the gun, and 5 to keep for defense or hunting or whatever. I'd rather him have that than not have the Benelli. So I think that's where it shines. For a person that wants power repeatably for a good value, the 870 does that. I know a lot of other pump shotguns do that too. The Mossberg 500, 590 is a great gun. The Benelli Novas are a fantastic gun. But the Remington is also a fantastic gun, and it's been used a long time. So maybe that person that for right now only has the money for that one gun and he wants to be able to do as much as he can, that 870 might be a solid choice, because maybe he decides later he wants to upgrade it. And it gives you a lot of options for, ghost ring sights or different barrels and all manner of accessories. It's kind of the Glock of the shotgun world. And I find out of the pump shotguns, of all the ones that I've shot and used, the Remington 870, especially compared to the Mossberg 500, is one of, if not the best shooter for me. It shoulders well, it points well, it shoots well. I like the design of the Mossberg 500. If I look at it from an engineering standpoint, the 500, 590, I think are better engineered, but I don't shoot them as well, and I would rather be able to hit my target. And I shoot the 870 better, and likely many people do. It tends to fit and point very naturally. And that's a big deal for a shotgun. That's a big deal for defensive use. It's a big deal for hunting, which I love. I have the Benelli now, but for a while when I would go out on my wilderness excursions, a Bible and a shotgun. It was an 870 in my Eberly stock backpack, because I knew whatever, small game, large game, whatever, I wanted to put meat on the table. Again, I don't care about what's sexy, or I don't care about what's super cool on Prepper magazine, or I don't even know if that's a magazine, but on the whatever the new version of Soldier of Fortune magazine is. I care about what's going to put meat on the table, and what's going to put meat on the table is a shotgun, and a very good choice for that is a Remington 870. It points well, it handles well, and it's been proven reliable. Perhaps one of the most reliable firearms when you're talking about a repeatable firearm with a reasonable rate of fire. I don't know if you could say one gun is more, there's probably a top 10 list of super reliable firearms, and I don't know if you could argue that one of them is the most reliable, but Remington 870 would certainly be on there as super reliable. And again, you're talking generally under $400. And you can hunt dove with it, and you can hunt deer with it, and you can hunt, in fact, a lot of, not either hunt or for defense, one of the things they recommend in Alaska for brown bears is a 12-gauge shotgun with slugs. All that, plus a great home defense option, a great truck gun, a trunk gun. For the guy that maybe he can afford the Benelli, but he's honest with himself. He's not a gun person all the time. He's not the kind of guy that maintains his guns. Maybe he lives in South Georgia where the humidity is crazy, or the Pacific Northwest, and he wants a gun to throw behind the seat of his truck or to throw in his trunk, and he might forget about it for 6 months, and he might get a little bit of rust on it, and he may take a wire brush to it or some steel wool for an application like that. And I'm not saying you should do that, but a lot of people do, and I realize that reality. The 870 would be a fantastic choice. Now, the Remington 870 comes in a lot of different options. Your main one, the one I'm talking about that you're probably going to find, at Walmart or Big Five or a big box store like that, is the Remington Express. If you're looking for one on the best value, that's kind of their standard model. The Express Magnum. Usually they'll handle 2 3/4 and 3-inch shells. I don't think I've seen one recently, like a recent make, that doesn't handle both. It's not a Magnum, an 870 Express Magnum. They make one called a Super Magnum that handles 3.5-inch shells. If you are really a specialty hunter for waterfowl and duck, and that's the main reason you're getting it, maybe look into that. Other than that, I would say don't worry about it unless you get it and it's used and it's a great price. It's obviously not going to hurt you to take 3.5-inch shells. And they also make a bunch of other models. They make tactical models. They make the police models. They make the Remington 870 Wingmaster, which is the super nice blued, beautiful woodstock, beautifully blued, glossy finish that you think about. But there's more than just cosmetics in there. So if you see one used about the same price as an Express new, I would say it's still probably a better value, because they also have upgraded better internals. If the 870 Express is reliable, the 870 Wingmaster should be even more reliable. And their actions tend to be very smooth, and you have to work that action to shoot it. So I would say it's not just all cosmetic. There's some real advantages to the Wingmaster. There's also the Marine model that comes in a stainless or nickel, some kind of finish that is supposed to be more impervious to salt water and corrosion and things like that, for the Coast Guard or Marine applications. It's called the 870 Marine, not for the Marine Corps, but for Marine, like a Marine environment. Really cool shotgun. We talked about mostly the 12 gauge because most people, and that's the most popular gauge, are going to look at it in a 12 gauge. If you're just getting into the world of guns and you want that one gun, there's nothing wrong with a 20 gauge. For everything you gain with the 12 gauge, you give something up over the 20 gauge. If you were just going to have one gun, I would say probably a 12 gauge, because that's what I have, and I wouldn't recommend something different. But you're talking maybe 51-49 over the 20 gauge. And if you're going to move a lot of miles on foot or something like that, and a 20 gauge has a lot of advantage. A 20 gauge is a deadly deer round with buckshot or with slugs. 20 gauge is a fantastic home defense round. There may be some weird outlier scenario, but I don't think in the vast 99 point whatever home invasion scenarios that if you hit them with a load of buckshot from a 20 gauge, it would be any less effective than a 12 gauge. Incapacitation, death, is final. If you hit them if the first 4 pellets of double up buck killed them, or number 4 buck, the other 20 really aren't going to make much of a difference. And maybe you actually are going to get out and train with it a lot, and the 20 gauge has less recoil. Would you rather be faster and more accurate with a 20 gauge, or a little bit more payload with the 12? So it really is a debate. And especially if you're going to be doing, like I said, a lot of walking on foot, a lot of hiking on foot. Now, I already had the 12 gauge when I was doing the wilderness survival stuff, but one in a 20 gauge or even a 410 would be a fantastic option for that. I think if I was getting a gun just for, wilderness walk survival, an 870 and 410 on that smaller frame would be a fantastic choice. They just came out with one called the Turkey. I'm probably not going to buy it anytime soon because I'll just carry the extra weight of the Benelli. It's not a big deal because that's what I have, and I'm not a gun collector. I'm a gun fighter. But if I was looking for, that was my thing for the next couple of years, I was going to, walk the wilderness of the Sawtooth Wilderness in Idaho regularly, then that would probably would be a good choice in 870 and 410. Because putting a lot of miles on foot, that less weight of the ammo and less weight of the gun makes a difference. That's more of other stuff I can carry. Fresh water if I'm hauling it uphill, or extra food. Things like that. So the 870 comes in a lot of different models, a lot of different gauges. The big ones you're mostly going to see is the 12 gauge and the 20 gauge. Most people are going to go for the 12, and that's great. It's a great gun. Like I said, I've used it a lot of years in law enforcement. I never did use one in the Marine Corps, but they are used in the military applications. They are used by law enforcement in our country and all over. They are proven reliable. And again, they give you a massive amount of firepower at a fast rate of fire for, generally under $400, depending on the market. And that's a fantastic option. With that, guys, I'm going to say thanks for listening to this episode. If you like this podcast, you may also like the Alpha Male podcast. If you care about the important stuff, you may also like Simple Man Sermons, the preachings of a simple man called by God to share the good news of Jesus Christ. If you want to find out more of those podcasts, contact me. Check out more visual stuff, pictures of past hunts or past, military law enforcement stuff. You can go to Patreon. Actually, you can go to goodshepherdtraining.com. Goodshepherdtraining.com. There's a Patreon link on there if you want to support. But go to goodshepherdtraining.com. If you thought this intel or any other intel put out was worth the fraction of the cost of a box of ammo, for as little as $1, you can support the podcast. And if you think that's a good thing, then you can go to goodshepherdtraining.com, scroll down to Patreon. If not, you can support by liking, subscribing, sharing it with your buddies, sharing it with people you think would benefit by it. With that, as a thank you for staying tuned till the end of this episode, a tactical tip. So a lot of people know about the Remington 870. It's a great shotgun. Like I said, especially for me, it points well, it points fast, it points accurate. But you may not know, a less familiar gun or two is the Remington 760, which is a pump-action rifle, and it comes in full-power rifle cartridges. A pump-action 30-06, pump-action 270, pump-action 243 or 308. And they come very similar to an 870. They are a pump-action rifle, full-powered rifle. And they're great, and they're fantastic. In fact, my very best friend, I wanted to get him a deer rifle several years ago. And to my knowledge, I think it's the only full-powered rifle that he owns. And he wanted an 760. And it's a fantastic choice. I do believe it is called the Game Master. For hunting something other than deer in a stand, where you're going to be stalking, where you're going to be doing perhaps follow-up shots, where you might jump an animal close for quick follow-up shots, that's a fantastic rifle. And another one, the 740, is a semi-automatic version of it. So just like the 870 has a semi-automatic counterparts, it's very similar in the 1100 and the Remington 1187, which are also fantastic. There's a semi-automatic rifle. Now, it's not a battle rifle. It's not, meant to do mag changes with 20-round mags. But if you're talking about a hunting or home defense rifle that'll do both big game hunting well and gives you a semi-automatic capability, that Remington 740, to me, also seems to point and handle very well. So check those out, the 760 and the 740, or the 7400, 7600, or the old model, I think 76. Check out the difference on all the models. I'm not super savvy on the nuances between those, but the 74 series and the 76 series, the 76 series is going to be your pump action, and 74 is going to be your semi-auto. Really cool guns that a lot of people don't know about. With that, guys, thanks, and have a blessed day.